Welcome back to the official Atari Games podcast. This is Jason here. This is going to be a fun one. I mean, they're all fun, right? Let's call it what it is here. I don't want to undermine my own product here. But anyway, this is an especially fun one. Joined by Mark Perloff, lead producer on Yars Rising on the Atari side. Welcome back to the pod, Mark. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for being here. And joined by a very special guest, not to undermine Mark by putting it doesn't matter. James Montagna, director of Yars Rising from WayForward.
Hi there.
Welcome to the pod. How you doing?
I'm fantastic today. Eager to dig in and chat about Yars.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So am I. But first, got just housekeeping. If you're here, if you're listening, if you're watching and listening, I have a request. Simple request. It's easy. Head on over to iTunes and Spotify. Give us a review. Hey, I'm not on iTunes. Hey, I'm not on Spotify. Get there, review us, say some nice things. Let us take advantage of the algorithm, okay? Need some reviews. If 1% of you goes out and reads and writes a review, that'll make a huge difference. Also, if you write a review, here's I'll put out there. If you write a review, I will read it for the next podcast. It could say anything. As long as it's not hateful or has profanity, I will read that review on this podcast. So how's that? That's a pretty good deal. Beyond that, join the Atari Discord. You know, it's there. Links at the bottom. It's in the description of both the podcast and the YouTube feed. While I may have misspoken last week, or I should say the last podcast, by saying Digital Eclipse has a Discord you could join, which they don't. Sorry. WayForward does. And you should join that. We'll have that link below as well. Now, wares? We got them. NeoSprint. It comes out next week, June 27th. If you haven't wishlisted yet, please do it. If you haven't pre-ordered yet and are really excited about it, please do that. Again, June 27th. It's coming soon. Very close. And also, we're talking Yars Rising here. You got to wishlist Yars Rising. Come on. Go on Steam, click that wishlist button. Go on your Switch, hit that wishlist button. Pre-order the physical edition if you really want to get crazy, because you're going to want this. You're going to want this game. You're going to want to pre-order it. And if you're not sold yet, I'll remind you at the end after we play a little bit of it and get you more hyped about it. So stick around, and then I'll repeat myself on all that stuff again. Most of it, at least. Lastly, today, the day this drops, 1 week from the day we're actually recording this, for context, because of the magic of it, it doesn't matter. Quote, read it from Shah, who's been on the podcast, our marketing coordinator. The Yars Rising remix contest kicks off today! Exclamation point. Atari, along with Icon Collective, is giving you a chance to be a part of the Yars Rising soundtrack by remixing the original track Disconnection by Mo Shop. The contest runs from June 21st to July 12th. Click the link in the description to learn more. That link, I'll just read it out here, iconcollective.edu/Atari. And if you didn't write that fast enough, well, again, look at that description. You can click that right there. James?
Yeah, pretty exciting stuff there. We have a remix contest. And I know that the artist, Moe Shop, who I was able to connect with last week, they had a big concert, a live event in Los Angeles. I got to chatting Yars Rising with Moe Shop, and I know they are really eager to hear what people are going to come out with for this contest. The track Disconnection featuring the vocalist Yushie is the one that's featured in some of our trailers so far, and people seem to really enjoy that track. So hopefully they have a great time messing around with it and cutting it up and making it all crazy and remixing it in interesting ways. I personally can't wait to hear what people come out with either.
The trailer track is awesome. I'm upset because when I hear a song like that, and I immediately know this is just going to be stuck in my head for weeks.
Yeah, it does that, doesn't it?
Nothing I could do about it. Actually, a little sidebar here. I went to career day at my mom's elementary school that she teaches at in the Bronx, and played the trailer for Yars Rising, the latest one. And nice. Let me tell you something. They lost their minds. They were dancing along to that track. They were having a grand old time. They loved it.
Excellent. Well, we
good
got
stuff.
a thumbs up from that audience.
Got a thumbs up from a bunch of kids with no purchasing power. So it's a beautiful thing.
But kids,
The
they
parents
have
do.
the purest,
Exactly.
their opinion on stuff. I always trust it.
Oh yeah. They're not
honest.
holding back. They will be brutally
They're
honest.
always honest. Yes.
And it was all positivity. So that's good. So that's good stuff. We're gonna show the game. Got through that stuff, a little housekeeping fast. I want to know, actually, while you're here, you might retread some of this stuff that you spoke about at Summer Games Fest. But you were at Summer Games Fest, right? And you were also at, were you at IGN Live as well, or just Summer Games Fest?
Yeah, both. We were at Summer Game Fest showing off Yars Rising, kind of in a cabana area by appointment only. So it wasn't like anyone could come up and play it. We just had a select press come enjoy the game. But we also made an appearance at IGN Live. It was actually WayForward President Voldy Way and I went to go talk Yars Rising there, and that's when we debuted the new gameplay trailer. And if you haven't seen that, definitely check it out. It's a really awesome trailer. I was really delighted to see that come together. And just really great energy at both events. It was really an awesome week last week.
It's cool. Any good stories you want to share, or at least one from either one of those events?
Let's see, stories from the event. Well, I think one of the interesting things was just how many people know Yars versus don't know Yars. I thought it'd be kind of fun to keep a tally of who knows. So every time someone sit down to demo, I'd be like, "Have you ever heard of a game called Yars Revenge?" And we actually had it as a prop. The original, it was from Ethan. Ethan had it from his personal collection and brought it in. So I was kind of using it as like this game. Do you know this one? And it's interesting. There's a lot of people that did know it, and I was really delighted by that. But there's always people oh, they're really apologetic. I'm so sorry, I don't know it. And I was just like, no, that's actually great. That's totally okay, because this is my opportunity to teach you about something that we love. So it was kind of an interesting situation where I'd bring it up every time. And it was a pretty even split, I'd have to say, for people that knew it and didn't know it. Or if they didn't know it, maybe they had heard of it before, but they just haven't played it. So that was kind of an interesting situation.
Cool. Good stuff. Yeah, I read about that in one of the previews. And that was pretty cool to see. That reaction. It's like, oh no, did I not study enough for this test? It's like, no, you're fine. Right. It's all good. Well, let's jump in. If you're on YouTube, the video is going to start now. But if you're not on YouTube, probably should have said that instead. If you're listening and you want to see some of this gameplay in action, switch on over there, and we will jump into a fresh game of Yars Rising. So we will start that now. All right, so got that going. Put in my little timestamp here. That is 8 minutes. Bam. All right, professional podcast. I'll tell you what, I need a producer.
That is the load game menu. I think it's a debut of the load game menu. That's what it looks like.
Oh, really?
Wow. Spoiler
Look
alert.
at that. Breaking.
Sneak peek.
Breaking news has a load game menu.
So we're starting off. We got the cutscene, and as this game is starting, I think the best place to begin. One thing I've read, I see anytime we make any sort of announcement, games related, I'm always reading everything people are saying, at least on Twitter /X, right? And various other forum posts. And one of the things that comes up a bit is the origin. And they're just making the game that Atari wanted them to make. And, Mark and I, along with many other people, can attest that is not the case whatsoever. So I want to know, set the record straight, James. Let's start here. Why does this game exist?
Well, Atari forced us to make this game. No,
that's not what we told you to say.
This was such an awesome project because there was so much freedom that Atari granted us to pursue the vision of what we hope to create here. So this was just really us talking to Atari early on. And there are just so many incredible Atari IP. It's one of the oldest names in gaming, and therefore it has the most classic brands out there in the industry. So we got talking back and forth. What could we make? What should we make? And we actually put together the proposal for this reimagining of Yars Revenge. and we shared it with Atari, and I think there's just this chemical reaction. Both of us were just like, oh man, we have to make this game. There's just like this feeling of this is something really special. And so we decided to, it got greenlit and we decided to build this thing. And this was the vision that WayForward had kind of like set out from the start. And it was really true to the vision, and we were able to make the game that we wanted to make. Atari had their wisdom and guidance all along the way as we were building it, so that was really awesome to have. But this is definitely something that is just purely fueled and born of the passion of WayForward from the outset.
Yeah. What was it about like Yars as an IP that you said this is what we want to do? Like, why Yars? Why this game?
You
And
know,
why tell it this way?
right? That's a question we get a lot. People react like, what does this have to do with the Yars Revenge game that I grew up with? And it's like quite a lot if you actually play it and dig in. We don't put that at the like forefront because there's a surprise element to it, of course. But I think the reason why we wanted to do Yars, to answer your question, is because it's such a special game in the catalog of Atari brands. When you look at the original 1982 game Yars Revenge and look at it up against the catalog of Atari games, there's just nothing else quite like it. It just really stands out from the sound of it, like the droning like audio and then the visuals of it with the colorful psychedelic static. It's so unique and so memorable and so special that I think for us it would just is a standout, and it inspired us like so many years later that how could we like reimagine this? What could we do with this? And there was no shortage of ideas. So we knew there was something, it was ripe for the reimagining. There was a lot that inspired us about it. And it was just a fun, amazing, quirky game that deserved to have more people know about it. And so that's kind of the answer that I might offer for that one.
I'll take it.
Yeah. I think there's like just very, relative to some games in Atari's catalog, it's very like unique and deep lore too. So there's a lot there to like build off of, which WayForward was able to do really expertly. Sort of cross genre while still retaining like the DNA of Yars. Obviously, as you see in gameplay, there's like direct references to Yars Revenge, but also just sort of they were building out sort of the Yars universe, and there was a lot of material there to draw from, which I thought was also a big advantage for using this particular IP.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny that oftentimes there's this discussion. I think, and this is what's fun about doing a podcast from the publisher perspective, right? Is that I think in the general, like in the broad gaming sphere, the audience, there's like a publisher equals boogeyman, right? Publishers equals bad guy, and they're gonna tell you what they want. But I think the key of it is that we, at least in the current form of Atari, I'm not trying to say none of that stuff ever exists, but the way we approach this game and any game in general is like, it started off with a discussion, honestly, between Wade and you guys, Wade, our CEO, because he wanted to make a WayForward game, right? Like, go to WayForward and saying, hey guys, what do you want to do? Because he's a fan. I mean, we're all I'm a huge fan of WayForward. Love the Shantae games.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. So this is awesome, and I feel.
I'm just kidding.
Shantae, I've heard that, like Dance Genie. Yeah, like sometimes transforms, dances a lot. It's good stuff. Shout out to Shantae.
I think if on that note, if players enjoy Shantae games, but maybe they don't know Atari stuff so much, I think they'll really enjoy this too. There's a lot of like similar, I guess, DNA here, just because we can't help it. It's the kind of games that we love to make. So if you enjoy playing Shantae, I think you'll like Yars Rising as well. It's a pretty safe bet, in my opinion. And I'm involved in both of those titles. So if you enjoy the stuff that I've made previously, you might like it. So please check it out. But I want to kind of touch on the point that you brought up before, Jason, because I think it's really good to mention the project itself, Yars Rising, really felt more like a partnership between Atari and WayForward. We were in lockstep. We knew what we wanted to make, and you all came to us and said so many times, make a WayForward game, that it just became like this mantra of the project. Like, we are really making a WayForward game here. We're making a game that is true to our core identity, and in the process, I think we can really surprise people and maybe make something kind of unexpected in a good way. Because a lot of people look at this and they're like, "Why would you make this genre of game for Yars Revenge?" And it's like, well, play it and find out, and you'll see the kind of the vision behind it, and maybe we can delight and surprise people with something they didn't know they wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny how many times a developer, like, well, we talk to developers all the time, meeting them at various events and whatnot, and they'll always say, like, all right, so what do you guys want to make? It's like, well, what do you want to make? Right,
Right.
Like, that's also where it starts. It's like, you guys are doing most of the work. Let's call it what it is. I don't want to force you guys to do this thing that you don't necessarily want to do.
I mean, if we're building something and we're not passionate about it, you're not going to get great results. But I think for this project, so much fun. I mean, are you allowed to have that much fun doing your work? Because we were, and I hope it'll show in the game itself. Like, we just had a great time with every step of development. That's not to say there weren't some tough times. Every project has its challenges, of course, but we really enjoyed building this thing. And I have the theory that if you have fun making the game, it'll show in the end result.
Yeah, I think it totally does. Just like the energy and life is just like very clear in the game, but like both gameplay wise, but also just like the character design and the sort of the characterization of Emmy, the lead here, and sort of all the other people that she interacts with. You can just sort of see the passion that's kind of imbued throughout it. So that's the WayForward touch.
I also like that it has a, WayForward. I also think about, especially with Shantae, right, is like there's a sense of whimsy, right? So even though there's like some dark stuff that's going on in this game, it still has that kind of light touch, that light sense of whimsy that you would expect. So even if you're coming in, you're like, I like Shantae, but this seems like a little bit different. It's like, no, you're still going to get that charm. You're going to get that charm for sure throughout. And then you're going to get a ton of Atari references throughout along the way.
Yeah, a ton is true. I think we're just a bunch of goofballs, so we can't like make a game like completely devoid of humor, or at least we can, but it doesn't like come as naturally for some of us on the team. We have games that are a little bit more serious, and they're fun in their own right, but I think there's just a subset of us at WayForward that likes that whimsy and wants to offer it, and it's just maybe a reflection of who we are, I suppose.
I think that's necessary, especially now. Everything is like, I came to a revelation, I think it was last year or so, when I was playing like a bunch of games and watching movies that were just like, man, everything's got to be so dark and depressing and edgy. It's like, what happened to fun things and happy endings? Like now we're at the point now where like a happy ending is more disruptive than than like a tragic ending. It's like, oh, did they die? Oh, they definitely died.
Right.
Like, you're gonna feel absolutely awful at the end of this experience, as opposed to it's like, no, let's just have some fun. How about that?
Yeah, when we were talking about like the tone of this game, like from the outset, just really early on, we knew we wanted to offer like a kind of I guess you could call it like a cyberpunk inspired world, but we wanted to reinvent cyberpunk to not be this like brutalist, like depressive, dark, like dystopian cyberpunk. And we wanted to kind of do our own version of it that is kind of bright and poppy, but can still have that like oppressive force. And that's where you get like Kotek, right? But I think the tone it's a very specific like variant of cyberpunk that Yars Rising is developed around.
Yeah, I think you guys nailed it as well. A big part of this, I think the most explicit part that is Yars, right, are the hacking games themselves. Was that? I mean, that was always the start. That was through there. What is the line between? Oh, I also like this little detail with like the laser is trying to jump over a little robot there. If you watch it on YouTube,
people like to run into that thing and they're like, "Oh, I thought we were friends."
Nope. What is the? How do you walk that line between keeping that nostalgic, then like bending the rules of it? Because I'm about to do a terminal here that's really like the first twist on the terminal that kind of adds in like centipede elements.
Right. We included another type of enemy called a Silarak, which that
Oh yeah,
originated from Yars Recharged. Actually, if you play that game, you can see there's something called a Silarak core, and we kind of
that's
borrowed
awesome.
that to bring just every bit of Yars, anything that we could fold into this. But yeah, this is kind of I guess, a deconstruction of the classic Yars Revenge game. But then we put twists on it, and I think the way you don't like lose the identity of it is the foundational rules remain the same all throughout. You're still controlling the Yar. You still want to like either clear what's on screen or clear a particular element. We have our magical transformation sequence moment here. As Emmy's DNA is imbued with the Zorlon shot, a physiological augment that alters her mitochondria, and now she can fire energy waves from her hands.
Yeah. Also, I need to give context. I gave you the story at GDC on
Yes.
where Silarax came from. So for
Oh,
the
yes.
record, I'm going to put that into the public sphere now. I wasn't going to bring it up unless you brought it up because this is about Yars Rising. It's not about Yars Recharged, but
Uh-huh.
got to give a shout out. So Yars, the name came from Ray, right? Like it was
Right to
Ray
sign.
backwards, and that's where Yars came from.
Right.
We were talking about, first they said, hey, we should call them EDOS for Wade backwards.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, what we should do is call them Silarax and name them after our lead programmer at Sneaky Box, Carolus, because he was just like, he was great. He was just like this like really grumpy guy too, very matter of fact. So
Awesome.
shout out to Carolus. He has now been immortalized
Yeah,
in
that's right.
2 games. And
Yeah.
that's incredible that that is the case.
And
I did not
had
know
no
that.
idea. We just were like, oh, there's something else besides Kotile in the world of Yars. Let's borrow that because it's part of the legacy of Yars. So we have to. So we were pulling from everywhere. We even pulled things from like the discontinued Yars Revenge First War Facebook game for certain elements of this. So we really dug deep. We did our homework. There's just so much from all over, like Yars history that appears in this game. So I'm really delighted to know that that was more than we knew at the time. And yeah, shout out to Careless, who I never met, but I hope they get a kick out of that.
Oh yeah, yeah, he's great. I'm sure he will. He'll probably crack a smile and then drink a beer.
That's
Or maybe something harder. Who knows? I don't know. Great guy though. Nice guy. I haven't seen him in a while, but nice guy. So I just acquired the Zorlon shot, as it were, in this game, and then and it's cool. I want to talk about the combat.
Sure.
The combat was one of the first things that stood out in the early development, and I'm just going to say it. It's Mega Man, right? Like this is Mega Man inspired combat, which is way different than any other Metroidvania that I've played, which typically you could shoot in at least, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 directions.
Sure.
Not more, if not 8 when you're hanging on something, right?
Yeah,
So
I think that's fair to say.
yeah.
Look, Mega Man games are an enormous inspiration for us at WayForward because we just love those games. We're all just people that enjoy video games. We have a deep, enormous passion for video games. So yeah, those are games that inspire us. I think we do borrow some things from that. And as you mentioned, the shooting is very much similar to that. It would be like if you mix the Mega Man style gameplay a little bit, like a touch of that with a touch of like a Metroid experience. I know you mentioned the term Metroidvania, which I think that's a fair descriptor of this style of game. I always avoid saying Metroidvania. I don't know why. I have this like aversion to like using the term, but it's like so useful because immediately people get like, oh, Metroidvania. But it's I like to say exploration action, right? So it is an exploration action game. But yeah, we borrow elements from the games that we love. So I think if you like those games, you might get a small taste of elements of that. And why Emmy can only shoot left and right, I figure, she's new to using this power. Maybe she doesn't have great aim. And I think one of the characters later tells Emmy that her aim totally sucks. So I thought, well, if she can only like kind of aim left and right, maybe that works out okay. So that's kind of my justification for it.
Yeah.
I did not know there was a lore rationale for that, but
I made it
makes
up.
some sense. Yeah. I remember earlier in development that it wasn't always Mega Man as like the sort of the key like touchstone for what the gameplay, for what the run and gun gameplay was going to be like. It was like rounds of iteration that brought us there, kind of. So I don't know, maybe you could talk about that a little bit, James, sort of the progression
absolutely.
of, and what development looks like for like trying to really nail down how you want something like, shooting gameplay to feel.
Sure. Development is by nature an iterative process. So there was versions of this game where Emmy moved much slower, and it was a little bit more deliberate. The shots moved slower. We had early concept art where Emmy was like aiming in diagonals and stuff like that. And I think it's one of those things where as you develop the game, you get a feel for it. You're holding the controller, manipulating the character. You start to feel like, oh, I want it to be more like this. Like, I think there was this joint feedback that it first came from you all at Atari. Like, we feel like Emmy should move a little faster. And it was a conversation that we were already kind of having on our side. And we're like, yeah, she should. And so immediately when you guys said it, we were like, okay, well, we're gonna have to make that change. There's a lot of that during the development process where we get a feel for something, and our initial instinct, what we were thinking we might want to try, doesn't always pan out exactly as we imagined, or we get a feel for it and think maybe it could be a little bit better. And it's not always faster, more intense. Sometimes it's actually limitation or constraints lends a way to having a little bit more fun. And in this case, the way Emmy shoots, it is a constraint of sorts, but it actually gives a really great contrast to the powers that Emmy will eventually grow to achieve over the course of the game. And those become a lot more special because your base shot is the way that it is. So, there's a logic and reason behind a lot of the choices in development. I'm not gonna say every choice has logic and reason. Sometimes we just do something because it feels right or it seems cool. But, I like to think we're professionals at what we do.
Which is logic. If you think it like, there's always a reason.
Yeah.
It could be a bad one, but there's always a reason.
Well,
and it's always a good one at the time, by the way. I don't want to, undermine that.
Yeah, I think some game development really is instinct. It's like why did you make that choice? I might get asked in like an interview or something, and I'm just kind of like stammering, like it seemed cool, it felt right. I can't like tell you why something is the way it is, but it's just this is what we do just by nature of what our gut tells us, and so. I think there's a handful of things like that, but Emmy is very deliberate. I think her mobility is very deliberate. The way you slide down a wall and try to jump off, and you don't have a certain ability yet, so she kind of clumsily jumps off. I always thought Emmy has like this sort of clumsy parkour element to her. Like she climbs up things, and she's not very like coordinated with it. And we even looked at like videos of like professional parkour artists and how they move around, and like, okay, how would someone that is a little bit more clumsy move around? So when you get like knocked back, Emmy has there's something in parkour called a kip up, where if you're on your back, you can use your momentum of your body to get back on your feet, like no hands required. And so Emmy does a kip up, but I think we kind of were thinking, all right, but maybe she needs to be like a little more clumsy about it, or the way she climbs up, like she can hang off ledges, right? The way she climbs up over the ledge, we were kind of thinking like, okay, how does a parkour artist do it, and then how can we kind of make that reflective of her personality? So every little detail of her animations, of her mobility, speed, and attack, these are things that we wanted to make sure were really honed in, because at the end of the day, the game is Emmy. The thing you're manipulating at almost all times, if you're not in the menu, is Emmy herself. So it's got to feel great when you hold the controller and manipulate the character.
Yeah. There's also that balance of, how much do you lean into the realism versus it's a video game, right? Like at
right.
What point does the intersection of realism versus fun happen, so
Right.
it's like, yeah, she's going to be clumsy, so she's going to be slow, and then she could fumble around, and then it's like, that's annoying.
Right. And that's one of the things that you have to iterate on, or you dial back. And there was a time where maybe some animations were a little slower, and it's like, that's disturbing the gameplay. It's like, well, does it make sense for it to instantly snap into this animation? Like, don't care, it's going to feel better that way. And then it does, right? I can give you an example. Like we were okay, we had Emmy crawling into vents, and then she would have like an animation where she turned around and started crawling the other way. And then we had an iteration where she would crawl, and then she would crawl backwards, but she'd be stuck facing one particular direction. They looked right, but they didn't feel as good as they could. So ultimately, we landed on is Emmy will crawl through an air vent. If you turn the other way, she just snaps the other direction. And no one has a problem with it. Is it realistic that should insta snap? I mean, that's kind of to your point, Jason. It's like, well, no, but it feels right because it's a game, and we want that to have really snappy feedback. And I see a lot of like game designers that are just starting out make a mistake. Like, I'm going to do a jump, and they add like an anticipation animation to the jump, and then the character leaps up after kind of like doing this anticipation. And then you get like a slow jump, or it doesn't have like immediate feedback of like I push the button and you skip it and you just go straight into the air, which is how we approach jumps in our games, where you want that immediate feedback instead of a deliberate like wind up, and then you sell it in the follow through of the animation, right? So this is all over the game. We have to think about these things, like what is the realness of the animation versus like it's a game, right?
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things you do, when talking about a game and like how you introduce Emmy in this thing, is like you start without even being able to shoot, which is kind of interesting. So that's like a really deliberate decision, I think, like when you start guiding people around, because that's like the thing that you expect to do, it's like that's playing a game. I go back to that line in Control, right, where they're like shoot slash kill slash video game. That guy is like, all right, right on. This is, and you start without it, then you get the shot. Now I'm about to get another upgrade.
That's right.
But like, what was the decision to start people without the shooting ability? And then beyond that, like, how do you, as you've done this a bunch of times at WayForward, and maybe you can speak a little bit to your personal background there, how do you determine that upgrade tree and how you introduce players to new stuff? And is there a standard WayForward Metroidvania ability template at this point?
No, there's not a template. We think about every game individually. Every game is its own beast. We approach it in a special way. But yet another question there I want to make sure to cover, why it is the way that it is for Emmy, as far as you start the game and you don't have the ability to shoot. And I think it's to provide this sensation of Emmy is a regular person. She is not like an amazing acrobat. She is not like a powerful hero. She's just a regular person. And I think the fact you can't really attack or do anything gives you a certain sensation of helplessness in a way that I think really speaks to like the growth of the character, because the moment you get the Zorlon shot, now you have something that you can sort of like arm yourself with, and now you can start to fight back against these things that you've been seeing for a little bit over the course of the initial part of gameplay. These robots, and they zap you and they knock you on your butt, and you have to get back up. And I think it's really a great progression of like, oh, I can't do a whole lot, and all I have are my wits, my reflexes, and my ability to hack. That's Emmy, like base level Emmy. That's who she is. But then you feel that sensation of growth. So I think for us, it's to answer the other question you had, how we introduce things. I think it's giving a sensation of growth, but also kind of making sure they're covering the span of things like offense versus mobility, and we don't like skew one way too much where we get all the weapons at the outset and then we get like cool mobility stuff. We tried to stagger it, and it's not to say it alternates, but we about when you might expect to be able to bounce off of walls, we want you to have the ability to bounce off of walls. I don't want to give away too much of different things you could do, but that's kind of
in the trailer. That's in the trailer.
Yeah, fair enough, right?
A lot of the abilities are in the trailer, actually.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in that gameplay trailer people haven't caught. If you freeze frame and pause at the right time, there's some interesting lore, interesting stuff there to pick apart.
That's cool. So I just got the nibbling ability.
You did.
So now I can nibble, which is hilarious because I don't remember which button it's on. There we go. By the way, I'm playing this the way everybody should play it, with a Stadia controller. So there you go.
Oh goodness! All right.
I like to keep people on their toes. So when I'm I'll throw a surprise in there, and you'll find out that I'm playing with the Stadia controller.
Yeah, you might be the first to play this game with a Stadia controller, as far as I know. So you're testing for us. You're making sure that it plays okay with Stadia controller. I should say.
I'm really grateful for Steam button mapping and Google giving that ability to their firmware update for the controller. It's a great controller. Great D-pad. That's how I play it. D-pad or thumbstick on a game like this? Where do you guys stand?
I played it with thumbstick almost exclusively, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
I probably played this game with a keyboard more than anything else.
That is crazy.
Over the course of development, I need to like quickly check something. I'm just like on keyboard, right? And the game does support keyboard, by the way, if you're so inclined. I don't know that I recommend it, but you can. I wanted to make sure that for those players that happen to want to use a keyboard, it is awesome. And as awesome as we can make a keyboard be, and I think we did achieve that, I'm actually pretty proud of some of the unorthodox but really smart, I feel, approaches that the team suggested that we kind of incorporated into this for keyboard control. But you said gamepad or
thumbstick or D-pad.
Yeah. I use both alternating for different scenarios. So there's times where I want to use the stick, and there's times where I want like twitch reaction during a boss battle, and my thumb will just migrate to the plus control pad, and I just use them completely interchangeably. I'm not even conscious about it. And it seems to work out. And that's sort of a WayForward game thing to do, to have just both work. So you can use either one you like.
Yeah. Anyway, the wind blows. I always like.
I want to
go ahead.
Go back for a second, because I feel like we kind of breezed past that. Emmy has the ability to nibble, because I think that's one of her first pickups is a trionic nibble, right? Which is I don't think there are that many other video games, probably period, where you get the nibble ability. I think it speaks to sort of the ways that we incorporated WayForward incorporated the original Yars in like sort of reinterpreting it in new ways for this game. So I don't know if there's anything you want to speak to about that, James, but I just wanted to shout it out that it didn't go unsaid that you can nibble in this game.
You can. Yeah. We wanted to pull inspiration from everything of Yars, and nibbling is an important component of Yars. And I think that sensation, that hammering sensation of like repeatedly nibbling, and that tick, 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 getting that just right was important to me personally. For a couple of reasons, but one of them is I just enjoy that sensation, and we wanted to make sure that sensation comes across. So we even went as far as to make sure that the rumble in the controller, when you use the nibble ability, you feel like a tick, 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 just to keep it like nice and satisfying. And the audio was a really important component, that rhythmic tick, 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 as you chip away at the trionic energy barrier and you kind of see it melt away. It's all about the sensation, and it's just a very Yars thing to do, that nibble. And you can experience that nibble in the hacking challenges as well. When there's a barrier, your Yar will go right up to it. And we went like frame for frame, kind of matching the Atari 2600 Yars Revenge game for like, what is the pace and rhythm of that nibble, and how can we make ours like we didn't match it exactly, and that was intentional, but get it close and feel right for our game, and still give that really satisfying sensation when you do it. As a matter of the rumble, the audio, the visual, all working in tandem to get that sensation just right. It was so important to us, and I'll tell you one of the reasons why is when we were in a meeting with Wade, the CEO of Atari, he said, what was it? I want to make sure I'm quoting him as accurately as possible. I bleeping love the nibble.
Thank you. Thank you for thanks for not making me have to do any of that post-production.
He enjoyed the nibble in Yars Revenge, and we wanted to make sure to get that detail just right for not only for him, but for us as well, because I tend to agree. I bleeping love the nibble. It's great.
I have to retell this story, because when we first started prototyping Yars Recharged, we didn't have nibbling. You could just shoot,
right?
And because that gameplay is like a twin stick shooter, and Wade was like, "We have to be able to nibble." And I believe, I don't know if it was him. I'm not going to throw shade here, or if it was somebody else, but somebody, maybe it was Wade, maybe it was not, but somebody did not know that you could shoot. And somebody did not know that you could nibble in Yars Revenge in the room. So that means at any given point in time, there was one person who played through Yars Revenge doing only nibbling, and another person who was playing through Yars Revenge doing only shooting.
That's amazing. And I guess both are technically valid, aren't they? You could play with just like you do like a nibble only challenge. I like that idea. And you know what? I like that idea so much. I think we kind of incidentally stole it for Yars Rising, because you have hacking challenges where you're only allowed to use nibble, and there's like a type of magenta cell barrier block. And there's ones where you're only allowed to use shoot, and it's a cyan colored cell barrier block. So just by sheer chance, incidentally, we did honor like that kind of gameplay challenge. So That's a really interesting story, though. Wow, the original game is very flexible in how you can approach it.
I was going to bring it up when I was in that other room. I like surfacing any of these behind the scenes stories about how games change and ideas that seem like a good idea at the time. Those like refrigerator looking things. There was a point, we were talking about nibbling, right? There was a point where those, after you destroyed them, would be lit on fire. And then and then you couldn't do anything about them until you were supposed to nibble away the fire, I guess. Was that the intent? Explain yourself.
So that enemy is called a surge protector, and it has a little face that actually looks like a wall plug. So I thought that was
cute. I think they're cute.
It's probably an enemy I stole from some Mega Man game, to be honest with you. They say great artists steal, so I'm doing my best to be a great artist.
That's just a coincidence. Capcom, don't read into that, please.
Inspired by. That's what we.
There you go. We'll take that.
But and I don't even know which one, and that might not even be true. But if it is, I'd love to know. Subconsciously, I probably picked it up. But this one, there's top and bottom, and it was just like, okay, well, that sounds fun. But after you defeat it, what happens? It was like, okay, well, it's an electric enemy. Maybe it like catches fire. It's like, okay, cool. And then maybe you need to like nibble to put out the fire, which stayed in the game. You can do during this boss battle here with Burning Sentinel. That still is there. So that's a pro tip. If there's an ember on the ground, you can use the nibble to actually put out the fire. Give it a shot. It's good fun. But
I'm going to nibble away at this Sentinel. Whoa.
We ultimately decided that was too much for that enemy. There's like too much going on, and we decided to simplify it, which is, again, the development iteration, right?
Yeah, totally. I think at first I didn't even know you could nibble it. I thought you just had to wait, because it was like after like 5 seconds or something, the flame goes away, I think. So I was just like, you need to kill these things and then just sit there. And I was like, okay, it's interesting.
Yeah,
enemy design.
Design. Sure, all right, whatever.
And that's changed a lot. Now you can just like hop on them, hop off. Like that's it's all.
Oh, it's great. I mean, it's
part
definitely
of the development process.
Yeah, totally. It's definitely one of those things where you start at the time, you're like, yeah, this is cool. We'll add another challenge, right? And then you scale back. You're like, that's a little bit much.
Is this the challenge that we want?
Exactly. Totally. And that's pretty cool.
And so this class actually went through a lot of iteration too. There was a version of this where there's like 3 different hacking terminals inside of there, and you had to hack while you were fighting the boss. So this one, of all the bosses, went through the most iteration, and most of that's because it was the first boss of the game, Burning Sentinel. So we wanted to make sure this battle you're doing with this giant mech is memorable, fun, and felt right. And I think we landed on a pretty exciting battle in the end. You got 20% health, my friend.
Yeah, it's not looking good. I'm kind of. I was having such a good.
You're
run
cruising up to this point.
I know. Yeah. Right. Yeah. All right. There we go. Yep. That's it. That's a wrap. Dead. DED. That's a good place to stop, though, on the recording, on the gameplay at least. I'm not letting you guys go.
Bye.
No, stay. You have to stay. You have to stay. I just got to write my timestamp here. Bam. Okay. So we're at the end of the recording. This game looks great. We're not going to show anything past the boss anyway. I've clearly showed I'm not the best Yars Rising player, but that's irrelevant. What should people know going into Yars? Like, what is there something that they should know going into it, or that's the sell line if they say, hey, look, I don't know what Shantae is. I don't know what Yars Revenge is. Why? What's the deal? What's the deal with Yars Rising? What's the sell line?
Why don't you go ahead and go first, Mark? I'm actually curious what your thought about what the sell line for this game is. What should they know going in? If you think about it for a second, what would that be?
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like, I don't think you need to know anything. Maybe that's a cop-out answer, but I think the game is really approachable. Like, I think if you like video games where you like run and jump and shoot stuff and like have fun surprises and
if you don't like
fun dialogue,
I don't know what to tell you.
If you don't like fun surprises, this is not the game for you.
Yeah. So like, I don't think you need to be like prepared when you go in. I think like the people who come in who love Yars as a game, as a brand, as a franchise, like I think they'll have like an even deeper appreciation for what WayForward has done, and not just in like the hacking games there, but sort of overall how they were able to incorporate all the Yars lore and then so much more Atari lore. But I think that's like that's like on top of just it being an awesome game for anybody. So I think it's awesome, accessible, fun gameplay for all ages. And then if you love Yars and you love WayForward, it's like that plus even more. How's that?
I think that's a great answer personally. As far as what I would love a player to know going in, this is the Atari podcast, so I'm going to speak to the Atari audience here for a moment. I've seen a lot of people say, what does this have to do with Yars Revenge? Like, they completely got rid of the original story. First thing I would like to offer is we love that original story. I have the comic book lying around somewhere, the comic book that came packed in the 1982 Yars Revenge game. And I'm here to tell you that without spoiling too much, that story is very relevant. It's very important to this game. And we read it and we incorporated it in so many ways. And there's just so many references and so much Yars Revenge love put into this game that we're even pulling from stuff like the 1982 Kids Stuff vinyl record. There's so much detail put into making sure that we respected the original game that I think you will be surprised. And then another thing I'd like to offer is we have an experience in this game that I almost think is like playing two games in one, where you have the core run, jump, and shoot exploration action gameplay of Emmy going room to room and blasting bots and mutant alien bugs and all that. But we have, of course, these arcade style classic gameplay hacking challenges. I've heard people refer to them as hacking mini games, and I suppose you could interpret it that way. But I see the hacking challenges almost as a secondary type of game, because it's almost like two games in one. It's a unique hybrid game, Yars Rising, because you are actually all throughout the experience alternating between these two different experiences. So it's so much more than just a mini game. You might play them in like bite-sized chunks, but that experience is growing, and it's growing in complexity and fun, and introducing new things alongside you all through the course of the game. And so I really do think it's like a hybrid of two games in one in that sense. And that's one of the things that makes Yars Rising just a really unique experience versus other similar games of the genre. So that's something I'd like players to maybe acknowledge going into it. Of course, none of this is like need to know, but that's just my just a little bit to offer.
Yeah. I'll just say that it's a fun romp.
Fun romp. Just put that on the front of the box.
Boom. Done. Ship it.
All right. So we're going to end with a question that I've been asking on the last few episodes to everybody who's been joining. And James, we'll start with you.
Sure.
What's your favorite part of the job? What's the best part about being a director of a game at WayForward? And it could be any part of the work that you've done at WayForward. Like, what's the most exciting thing?
Well, I've been making games at WayForward for a long time. I'm in my 18th year here, and I wouldn't be here this long if I didn't absolutely love it. It's just a great experience, start to finish. Every game, even when there's challenges, at the end of the day, we're making products to delight and entertain people. And at the end of the day, we're all entertainers, right? So I think for me, it's a two-part answer, right? The development process, I work with just incredible talent. I'm so honored to work alongside the folks that I do. They just make magic. Like I'm a director. My job is to tell people what to do, and sometimes I'm telling people what to do, and they're just like, "Okay, I'm gonna like make your vision come true." And it's like, this is like beyond my imagination. This is so cool. And so I'm just really like honored. The engineers, programmers, the artists and modelers and animators, and even the company leadership. There's just really great skilled people I work with, and they're just so delightful. And so every day I come in here to the office, and I'm happy to do what I do for that. And the other side of it, my favorite thing is when we make a game that resonates with players and I see a smile on their face when they play, or they write something excitedly and they draw fan art and cosplay the characters. I'm looking forward to that for Emi Kimura. I think that would be amazing. That just brings me so much delight and joy that we could entertain someone and brighten someone's day and give them something that brought happiness, because the world could use a lot of that.
Absolutely. Mark, what about yourself? What's your favorite part about being a producer at Atari?
Oh, wow. Well, first off, that was beautifully said, James. Sincerely. Favorite part. I mean, I think it's like I think of it as my job to like support creatives here and with the developers that we work with, like making really cool stuff. So the times that I get to meet with James and have our calls with WayForward and with all the other development teams that I work with, like just to be able to help like tap into that, like the creative spark of those teams, and to help support them however I can to sort of uh, support their vision in making all these really really cool products. That's the best part for me, is just being a part of this like broader team effort to make these ideas, whether they come from us or come from the development teams that we work with, like come to life. So and then to see it like when we actually get a deliverable and we get to like play the thing, and I'm not in the trenches with James, like I get it, like I see it through the pinhole, like at certain stages where I get to like see all the work that has been done over the past like X weeks and be like, oh my God, that thing that we just like last time we looked at was just like on a piece of paper is now like I can play it, is so exciting for me. So just to be a part of that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, as a fellow producer, I mean, it's just being around, like we wouldn't be in this industry if we didn't have that interest in the arts and the creative process, and just to be any small part of it is really awesome, especially when we get to work with creatives like yourself, James, who exude that passion. And that goes for any of the developers we work with or we've had on prior. Like, I hope that, one of the things that I hope to get through with these podcasts is that actual feeling and commitment, and that, we are passionate about what we deliver, even when it doesn't connect with everybody. We're at least putting our all into it, and really excited about delivering some awesome products. So,
and it shows working together. I think, Mark, that was also very well said, and we feel it. We like you guys. We really enjoy working with you. We hope to keep it going. Who knows what's next? It'd be great to keep it going, and we're not done with Yars Rising quite yet. We're in the home stretch, but I think the connection between WayForward and Atari is strong, and the end result of that connection is awesome. And we have a great game on our hands that I hope a lot of people that are listening will really look forward to. It's in some ways a real love letter to Atari. In so many ways, the history of the company, and there's all sorts of references and things that I think Atari fans will enjoy. So I just wanted to throw that in as well. And it's because we have just a great love for the history and the brands of Atari, and we enjoy who Atari is today as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap things up. James, thank you so much for joining and taking the time. This was awesome. If people want to find you on the streets of the internet, where would they go?
Sure. Well, there's always on social media, X or Twitter, as I still prefer to call it, at WayForward is the company account. And then you can find my personal account at James Popstar. And I'm also on Instagram, and I think WayForward's also on Instagram. So check us there too, WayForward Tech. And come say hi and get hyped about Yars with me, and stop by our Discord.
Yep. And again, I was going to plug that at the end, man. Have a little faith in me. All right. It's a plug sandwich.
You can still
actually
do
no,
it.
It's not. It's a Yars sandwich with plug bread. All right. This is the problem. Like, people always say it's a blank sandwich, then they're really talking about the bread.
Right.
Because the only thing that you get it. Mark, what about you? I think we've done this before, and you're kind of hidden and private on the internet.
I was gonna say, you keep asking me, and I don't have anything
fine.
to tell you. I don't. Atari.com.
There you go.
Just go
it's
there.
A good place to go. Yeah, go to Atari.com, and if you're walking around in the somewhere on the East Coast of this country, maybe you'll see Mark. He's the guy who looks like that. And I'm the guy who looks like this. And you can also follow me on Twitter /X at Jays of Doom. And all the plugs, because I know you want them. We got join the Atari Discord, join the WayForward Discord, both links below. You know what else is linked below? All those things, all those links to Wishlist or pre-order Yars Rising. You can also pre-order the physical edition at Best Buy or Amazon or your retailer of choice. Knock on your mom and pop shop and say, hey, you guys getting that physical Yars Rising? Get my name down. Get me one. That would be great. And then NeoSprint, be on the lookout. It's coming next week, June 27th. Mark is also the producer on that one. So, just show Mark love for the rest of this year. You can't tell him in the social, in the internet town square which, hey, I respect him. Stay away from that, Mark. It's a terrible place.
I'm on it all the time. I just don't.
All right, he's out there. He'll see your love.
Have a presence. Yeah,
he'll see your love. Anyway,
I'm lurking.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, and until next time.